always be recording, right?
Yeah, I'm just getting me plugged in here to the charger here so this doesn't suck my battery dry and then I have to go off the phone. Alright, I think we should be solid. Yes, we got power.
Because we're solid. Solid as a
Yes, but the answer is also no because I'm waiting on Raph to come in. So we did have you ever heard of Mad Pig Customs?
No.
Okay. They are the new wrecking ball in the industry for custom lever guns.
Mad Pig.
And Mad Pig Customs.
Okay.
If you're into lever guns, I own every single custom lever guns rifles that's notable. And he is leaps and bounds above everybody.
Introduce us.
I got to be friends with the guy, and we were doing a collaboration. We're doing 4570 ammo in full power and subsonic, and then we're doing full power 3030 and subsonic 3030.
Sweet.
So the labels on the box say, Defiant Munitions, and then, Mad Pig Customs. We're doing Mad Pig Customs loads and stuff. But what he did was he pretty much took an AR and a lever gun. They had sex and then had one of his guns.
Okay.
And it's literally
He's got a website?
Yeah. Yep. It's a tactical lever gun. He cuts the barrels down to 14.5. You can either suppress them or do whatever. And they put a Midwest Industries rail on it. Dude,
I've got one lever gun. Oh, those are cool. I'm going to share my screen.
They're so cool.
We're recording now, so I'm going to share this with the lead heads here.
Yeah. Are we rolling now?
Yeah, we're rolling.
Oh, okay.
There it is.
Yeah.
That
if
is
you want
sick.
me to, dude, they're so sick. So the stock is made by Chisel. That's a new company. They just released the stocks, and it's just literally taking the lever gun to new heights that it's never been. And then that's the old Midwest rail. The new Midwest rail is like totally kick-ass. But yeah, if you want me to make an introduction, let me know. Steve, the owner at Mad Pig, is super cool, dude.
Yeah, absolutely. These are really cool. I've been seeing more lever action. Somebody's been pushing it, and I think was it Costa, whatever his name is, that did a lever tactical class or something?
Yeah, yes, it is. And actually, Costa pushes Mad Pig Customs guns.
Oh, he does? Okay.
Yep, those are the guns he shoots.
That is sick. Yeah,
I can see why. They're gorgeous guns.
Yeah, so yeah, he calls them the Thumper. So I have a Thumper in 4570 and 3030, and they're so cool.
Oh, you got a 4570? Sweet.
Yeah. So
Henry
actually,
Thumper
I got
packages.
What?
So does he take an existing one and can convert it to this, or he sells them this way?
Yeah. So he takes a Marlin donor gun and converts them. There's a considerable amount of work that he does to them, to the actions and everything. Puts new levers on them, his own design levers and triggers and everything. And then he also is doing Henry's as well, because Henry has made leaps and bounds in into their guns. But yeah, Marlin is probably the most popular.
That one looks integrally suppressed.
Yeah, I know. I'm looking at that. It's huge. It's probably
that's an Osprey. Yeah, that's a Silencer Co. Osprey, and it looks like it's chambered in go Pete.
Yeah. I was gonna say the same thing. It's probably a 4570 because those cans are gigantic.
Yeah.
So, So yeah.
Very cool.
But yeah, it's
there
it's
you
a cool
go.
thing, man.
Mad Pig.
After
digging it.
Yeah, I'll make an email introduction.
Yeah, that'd be
if
cool.
you want after this. And like I said, Steve is a cool dude.
Awesome.
So the problem is finding, Marlin lever guns anywhere to use as a donor, because it's not easy.
You get Marlins, you get Henrys. I guess he could probably pretty much do any lever gun, I would think. So anyway, we'll get in touch with him and maybe we'll get him on the show. So Leadheads, you are hearing us talk about liver guns. That's not the topic today, but it's a good topic anytime we're talking about guns. So welcome back to the Talking Lead Podcast. I'm your host, Lefty, and we got a great show lined up for you today. If you've been watching our social media, you know that we're going to be talking about bullets versus architecture, and we're going to have Ken Allen with Ken Allen Training joining us up there in Massachusetts. He was on the last AK Corner. If you
Lefty, New Hampshire.
Or New Hampshire, I'm sorry. He's up in New Hampshire.
He's not a masshole.
He's not a masshole, that's right. I get them all confused. They're up there. They're all lumped up there together, like a Klingon off a dog's ass. So, but he's going to be joining us here a little bit. The voices that you hear now were also on the AK Corner last episode, right? Pete, were you on last episode or the episode before that?
It may have been the one before that.
Might have been the one before that. But joining me is Pete Pye with Defiant Munitions, regular to the show. I think this is like your third or fourth appearance now.
Yeah, I believe this would be third.
We thought having a ammo manufacturer during this discussion would be key. And then, of course, we always got to have a mad scientist in the building. And for that, we always bring in old reliable Brian Keeney with Occam Defense. Brian, welcome in.
As you can see, I have my 11th tinfoil hat added on, given the latest news. 10 was not enough.
You think we're being hacked?
You mean our brains being hacked? Absolutely.
Our brains and our conversations and everything.
Yeah. It's a new, well, as Sleepy Joe likes to say, we got a new world order. So
there you go.
Who knows? Yeah.
There you go. So, guys, appreciate you joining us. Before we get into talking about the ballistics against different building materials with Ken, I always like to thank our sponsors. Got to thank those that make this show possible. So when you get a chance, Leadheads, go and show them some love. Mission First Tactical. Go to missionfirsttactical.com. Am I still sharing my screen? I think I am. I can just go here right now. If you guys go to Mission First Tactical, go to their website, use the code LEADHEAD. You're going to get 20% off. They have magazines. They've got holsters, or not magazines. They got magazine holders. They've got holsters. They've got accessories for your AR-15. They used to have AK stuff, Brian. I know you're into the AKs. Their grips are really good. I've got some of their grips. I like their grips a lot.
Well, I have yet to see these. I'd love to try them out.
Yeah, so I don't know if they're still making these or not. They've got them on their website, so I'd assume that they're still doing those on the grips. But they're going to look into doing like furniture and stuff like they do for the AR-15s. They've got magazines. They've got forends. They've got...
Oh, you got to slide back to that Wolverines one up there.
Oh, did you like that one?
Oh, man. Where was that? One more up, maybe? There it is.
This one?
That one is awesome.
So that's the great thing about it is you can get their 30-round AR mags, and you can have custom things printed on it, just like we're looking at right here. If you've got a design you want to send into them, they can plop it on your magazine, or they've got these pre-designed ones that you can just go ahead and order from them, like the Wolverines.
I need to get some Defiant Munition ones done.
Yeah, you do.
I think we can arrange that. We'll get Dave and you on a phone call together, and we'll make that happen, definitely.
Yeah. Whose mags do they use, or are they theirs?
These are theirs. They're their own custom design magazines, 30-round magazines.
Oh, wow, okay.
Really good mags. I like them. I use them a lot.
Awesome.
And then they've got AR-10 mags as well. So for your 308s, they make those as well. But yeah, go check them out, Mission First Tactical. And then, of course, Kel-Tec. And I've talked about it. They have given us a discount code at Kel-Tec. You can use the code LEADHEAD. You're going to get 15% off anything in their pro shop here. Not their guns, but their apparel. Like I said, telling you a couple episodes back, they do still make the flashlights. And I've got that one, the CL48. I've got like 3 or 4 of those. I've got them in my cars, got them in my backpacks, my EDC carry bags. They just make great lightweight light sources there. And the Kel-Tec folding knife, this is something I think might be new to them. I've got a larger version of this. It was a bayonet style. It says it's out of stock, $110, but I do have one. I don't have it handy, I don't think. But those are kind of cool. But you can also get their shirts, their hats, like I've got on right here, Kel-Tec hat. Get 15% off. Use the code LEADHEAD. And then, of course, Seal 1 for all your gun cleaning, lubrication, and corrosive protection needs. Go to Seal 1. They've got these pre-made-up kits for your pistols, for your rifles, the pre-soaked bore patches. You tell them what caliber you need, and they've got a package for it. Use the code LEADHEAD. You're going to get 25% off anything at Seal 1. And they've got some cool swag, too, hats and shirts and things like that. And we're going to be giving away one of their packets today to one of you lead heads that participated in our listener questions on social medias. So there you go. Go show those guys some love. And Brian, Occam Defense Solutions, of course, our AK Corner. We did AK Corner last episode. I think it was previous to this one. It was a good one. Enjoyed it. And I think that was your first return, right?
Yes, it was. Still sort of touch and go with in the Keeney household. Wife's been ill, but we're on a slow road to recovery, which is great. Happy to be on it. So thanks to all the lead heads out there who sent her well wishes. Those meant a lot.
And you didn't get a chance to tell us all the new things that you guys have going on there. You had to jump off a little sooner. So you want to run through that real quick? What's new and exciting at Occam Defense?
Yeah, we let's see. Our rollout of the gas blocks, adjustable gas blocks that are Merc compatible, but also AKM and AK-74 compatible. Those have been delayed through logistics problems. However, I have it on good authority. We'll be shipping those next week, which is very exciting. We have our PH2 next-gen sights coming out. There are a slight twist on our first model that's AR-style peep sights for the AK. And we are midway through the machining programming. So for those that have pre-ordered, we're pretty well on track here. And still shooting for May 1st for first shipment.
Okay.
And
so what's different in this generation than your PH1s?
Thank you for reminding me. We've got, instead of 4 diopters, we're doing the biggest one and the smallest one for holes. And then there's a medium. There's only one medium now, and then there's a battle notch. So for those that like the battle notch kind of view of a more standard AKM, this will be a good fit for them. And also the front sight post is now AR-15 compatible. So you can take your favorite XS or Trigicon front sight with tritium in it and swap it in, or if you have another one like a narrow pin or a ball. Apparently there's some that are a circle that work really, really well, where you put a circle and a circle together. So that sort of
I haven't tried that yet. That sounds interesting.
Yeah, one of our students brought it to me, and I hadn't heard of it, and it sounds brilliant. So I'm likewise interested. But our two guests here might have some experience with that and can enlighten us.
Possibly. Pete, you got any experience with the circle front optic?
No, I don't. No, I don't. I was going to look those up. I never even heard of them.
Very cool. And then, of course, you guys can go to occamdefense.com and see all the products that Brian's offering now. He's coming out with new stuff every week, it seems like. You got something new coming out. and that's not a bad thing.
No,
for us,
no,
maybe for you, but not for us.
Yeah, there you go.
Just adds to your headaches and woes, right?
Yeah, well, it's awful fun making new stuff. It's just it's crazy how much it takes to put out one product. Like the amount of documentation you need to put together, the processes, the buckets for carrying the stuff around. Like everything we make is so many different shapes that I've just broken down, and I've started making crates for us to carry stuff around the shop with, and that's been working really good. But I never thought that making boxes to hold our parts would be part of my job description.
Got to have something to put them in, right?
Yeah, there it is.
Well, we're glad to have
Hello,
you back
Mr. Allen.
for 2 episodes in a row, and there's Ken.
And there's Ken.
Speak of the devil, not from Massachusetts, but from New Hampshire.
Thank good.
Brian corrected me earlier.
Yeah, Marty tried to say you were a masshole, and I
man,
yeah, right. It's fighting
Them's
words.
fighting words, brother.
Right. I was quickly corrected. But welcome in. We're excited to have you back for another episode. You also were on the past episode of the AK Corner.
Yes, sir.
And I think we might have discussed doing exactly what we're going to be talking about today. We're going to be talking about some ballistics data that you're going to share with our listeners. That's pretty important. And that's going to get us into our jackwagon train. We got 2 jackwagons that I want to take care of, or 1 jackwagon and 1 hero. It's going to play into what we're going to be talking about. And these come to us from listeners Aura and Pierce, the 2 nuts that go back and forth on social media whenever they make posts on one another. So they have nominated, and Gunny is bringing in the jackwagon train as I'm finding the article here.
Hoorah, Semper Fi, do or die, hold 'em high at 8th and I. It is time for the talking lead jackwagon of the week, so brace yourself, baby.
Constitutional carry is becoming, it seems to be a thing that's becoming more popular these days in the states. So more and more states are passing the constitutional carry. Of course, Tennessee did it. I'm here in Tennessee, and it's probably one of the worst constitutional carry laws that has ever been passed. I think it barely can be considered that, but they did pass one here in Tennessee. But before we get into that, the jackwagon that I want to talk about is Washington. So Washington has cracked new gun laws on high-capacity ammo magazine, and they're tightening their open carry rules. This is Olympia, Washington State. Governor Jay Inslee signed a package of bills Wednesday tightening the state's gun laws, including a measure that bans the manufacture, distribution, and sale of firearm magazines that hold more than 10 rounds of ammunition. So this puts Washington up there with California and New Jersey in their restrictive magazine capacity laws.
I'm very much forward to erecting the wall between Washington and Idaho. I'm unfortunately 5 minutes from the Washington border.
Well, hopefully, yeah.
So, like, if you want to go to Costco, you're going to Washington.
Oh,
and
damn.
I'm fine with an immigration checkpoint between the states. I will give up my Costco to not have to have easy.
Well, here is Governor Inslee's statement. It says, we are not willing to accept gun violence as a normal part of life in the state of Washington. And they think by limiting magazine capacity, they're doing something great there. Obviously, he's a Democrat, said that a news conference in Capitol State reception room where he's surrounded by lawmakers and other supporters of the new law. So get this. The Capitol was closed to the public several hours before and after the bill signing. So they knew this was going to be unpopular, so they set up measures to insulate themselves and protect themselves from any protest about this.
Isn't it funny how that works?
Isn't that funny? Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
So the law says violations would be a gross misdemeanor, which in Washington is punishable by up to 364 days in county jail, a maximum fine of up to $5,000, or both if you are caught with a magazine that will hold more than 10 rounds. So jack wagons, there's our jack wagons. And to counter that, Alabama, Indiana, and Ohio join constitutional carry states. So these are our heroes.
Yes.
Winners.
This episode. The governors in Alabama, Indiana, and Ohio signed constitutional carry measures into law this month, beginning January 1st, 2023, July 1st, 2022, and June 12th, 2022, respectively. Residents who can legally own a firearm will be able to carry a concealed handgun within their state of residence while adhering to their local, state, and federal ordinances. Without a concealed carry.
Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
One thing that should bring everybody a bunch of joy is that Moms Demand Action and Newtown have started posting their L's in fundraising. So they're actually publishing, they're sending out emails talking about all of their losses, which are huge right now. And I've taken great enjoyment at reading those. So,
yes.
Yeah, to all you folks out there against constitutional rights, like keeping and defending yourself with arms, yeah, have a nice fucking day.
There you go.
Yep.
It goes on to say here, says, any right requiring a fee or government permission slip isn't much of a right at all, says Jason Quimet of the NRAILA Executive Director. That's why the NRA worked tirelessly with state legislators to pass the landmark legislation in Ohio. The NRA commends Governor DeWine for signing this important piece of legislation that protects Second Amendment rights of all law-abiding Buckeyes. Go Buckeyes.
I think Christy Noem just in South Dakota just signed one into repealing all CCW fees for the same reason, which is awesome.
Did. Yeah.
Like,
yeah,
good on you.
Well, we talked about this.
A great governor.
We talked about this in a past episode, but it's illegal to, I guess, charge a fee or a tax for a constitutional right. You're not supposed to be able to do that.
No, I don't believe so, and that is what Christy Noem has been fighting.
Yeah. So it's illegal for them to do that to begin with. You know, it's they shouldn't be able to charge a fee or make us buy a license anyway. So it's nice that somebody has seen that, and it seems like these states are following suit. There's something like 26 states that have done this or in the process of doing it, and I believe Georgia might be also in the process of doing this.
I think they are.
And I think we all agree all gun laws and all permits are illegal under the Constitution. So it's not like we're saying we approve of this stuff. We'll take the wins where we can get them.
We're just saying it's about time. Yeah.
Yep.
Absolutely. It's I tell you, we have South Dakota has one of the she is just absolutely awesome, and she is fighting her butt off to get this stuff, taken care of. So it's been pretty great. It
says with the addition of Alabama, Indiana, and Ohio, there are now 24 states with constitutional carry. Alaska, Arizona, Arkansas, Idaho, Iowa, Kansas, Kentucky, Maine, Mississippi, Missouri, Montana, New Hampshire, North Dakota.
You're saying it like a New Yorker, but we won't hold it against you because we know you're trying your best.
I'm from Tennessee, so that's my best New Hampshire.
Am I wrong, Ken?
No, you're right. Those that actually have the accent in New Hampshire say it, New Hampshire.
New Hampshire.
New Hampshire. Yeah.
Like a Canadian.
Well, that's where it comes from, is the French-Canadian influence. Yeah.
Is that why you say cheers all the time?
That's actually part of my English background. I lived in England for a while, and I still have adopted family there. So,
okay. Well, cheers.
It's part of me.
So North Dakota, Oklahoma, South Dakota, Tennessee, which again is barely a constitutional carry law, Texas, Utah, Vermont, West Virginia, and Wyoming also allow law-abiding individuals to carry a concealed handgun without a government-issued permit. So there you go. I'm glad to see that. So almost half of the states, and there's more coming. There are more that are working on it. So very good.
Hey, Leadheads, Dwight Settle with Seal One. Just here to talk to you and tell you a little bit about our product. Seal One CLP Plus is a bio-based, non-toxic product. It comes in a paste, liquid, aerosol, and pre-saturated bore-specific patches called sealskins. They all do the same thing, just different methods of application. The best way to use our product is to start with a clean firearm. There's two reasons why I say that. First, you start with the Seal One CLP Plus by field stripping your firearm and covering the entire firearm inside and out, bore, barrel, everything with the Seal One CLP Plus. You'll see how easy it spreads around. You'll want to wait about 15 to 20 minutes. Then you come back and you want to wipe it all off. So you see how easy it is to put on and remove. And the second reason we say to use a clean firearm is you'll find that it's not clean. We're going to pull out more carbon that's been left behind with whatever product you've been using before. Okay, it takes about 3 cleanings. So I like to say a clean shoot, clean shoot, clean shoot. Just normal usage before the Seal One CLP Plus has removed whatever product that you were using before and has seasoned the firearm. It's kind of like breaking in a cast iron skillet. And after that first cleaning, you will notice a difference. And with each successive cleaning, you will find that it gets easier and easier to clean. Seal One CLP Plus is a dry lubricant and is designed to work as such. You will find that malfunctions are virtually eliminated when used properly, because the majority of all malfunctions are caused to carbon buildup. And with the Seal One CLP Plus, the carbon does not build up. Seal One CLP Plus is safe on all metals, plastics, composites, polymers, rubber, wood, and leather. Seal One CLP Plus is a one-and-done formulation. No other products are required or needed to clean and lubricate and protect your firearm. That's why we say Seal One and done. Seal One is a proud sponsor of the Talking Lead podcast and the Leadhead Brigade. Use the code LEADHEAD for a 25% off discount.
Those are our jack wagons and our heroes. Do you guys have any jack wagons or heroes that you want to throw in real quick? Oh, somebody's laughing there. I know we could probably go all day on our jack wagon train, but we've got a lot of good information from Ken that we want to talk about. And I thought these were good jack wagons to kind of tie into our conversation that we're going to have with Ken and Brian and Pete about being responsible for your bullet, knowing the environment that you're in, because with owning a firearm comes great responsibility, and this is one of the things that you need to consider is the path that your bullet's going to take after you fire it and everything that it's going to possibly hit. So with that, we'd like to introduce Ken Allen with Ken Allen Training. And Ken, just give a quick background that kind of qualifies you for this, for our listeners who aren't familiar with you.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, Marty. I've been an instructor for more years than I can remember at this point. I've instructed everything from open water sea kayaking to wilderness first aid to gunning. And for the last 20 years of my life, I've been concentrating mostly in the gunning platforms. I had been lucky enough to be selected to work at the Sig Sauer Academy, and I worked for them for 8.5 years. They sent me across the country. I worked locally in New Hampshire quite a bit, and sometimes out of the country, teaching qualified civilians and law enforcement personnel and some mill personnel and agency members and government members from our country and others under contract with them. I learned a tremendous amount while I was working with them. The professional aspect of working in an academy at that level is tremendous, and I will always appreciate that. And I decided to go out on my own and take it on the road. So I am now a travel trainer. I do travel across the United States. I've been doing it since 2016. And also teaching out of New England, mostly in New Hampshire, but I'll travel to wherever there's good range and good people that want to participate and learn. I concentrate mostly on our qualified civilians and bringing them up to speed on their let's say their abilities for self-defense, whether it's self-defense of themselves, families, others, community if necessary. And when I mean that, I'm speaking to when we have natural physical disasters such as hurricanes and flooding, tornadoes, and people need to protect their neighborhoods. We've seen instances of that. So we help folks with that, and in that realm. We also teach some aspects of competition, general recreation shooting. We'll go from the basic beginner that knows absolutely nothing about a firearm right up to those that know quite a bit and do tier 1 work. And that's actually where my background comes in from my studies. I was very fortunate early on to be taught by a few tier 1 personnel from different places, many of which people will know, but I'll leave them nameless at the moment. But just be it said, I spent a good bit of time with them, training with them, absorbing. And then in typical fashion of the way that I work, I go ahead and I absorb the best of the best. And then I boil that down to a very simplistic platform to then translate to others. And I do so in multiple ways for different listening and learning types. So that's the quick gist of it.
And you also don't you have a law enforcement background?
Yep. I do work for an agency, and that is a part-time aspect of what I do.
Yep. Okay. And then Pete, you're going to have to unmute yourself. Pete, we've talked about your background before on past episodes, but go ahead and talk about your background as well with SWAT.
Yeah, I was a police officer for 14 years and did some SWAT work for a little bit. And, yeah, that's it.
That's it?
So
you got like 15 years on with LE experience. You were on a SWAT team. So some of the things that probably the majority of things we're going to be talking about, you've had firsthand experience with. With more and more firearm owners that are out there, especially new firearm owners, a lot of our listeners are LE military, and I think this topic is really going to relate. The research that Ken has started doing in taking different calibers and showing you the effect that they have on different surfaces, different building surfaces, structures, and things like that is going to be a real eye-opener. And as Ken gets in and starts talking about this research that he's been doing and is going to continue to do, he's just kind of getting started with it. Brian and Pete, feel free to chime in with questions or comments as he's going through this. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Ken. And Ken, just kind of give us an overview of this research that you've been doing at your facilities.
Thanks, Marty. I appreciate it. And thanks, Pete and Brian, for coming in and being part of this conversation. Pete, really great to meet you finally. Heard a lot about you.
Likewise. Same here.
It's a pleasure, sir. So like everything else I do when I'm instructing, I view this as an open conversation. I am never here to just lay down information or track down on any given topic. It's really an open-ended conversation, and the ability for others to chime in is just as important as everything that I'm saying, if not more so in certain cases. So please, guys, if you have stuff to add or questions that are going to trigger other thoughts, please just bring it on in. But where this started, for many years as a learning tactician, an instructor, I have always questioned the why and the what's, where things come from, why they're working such and such, why they don't. And when it comes to the basics of ballistics, you could get together with folks that could be very, very heady and very nerdy on that subject. And that I'm not going to get into. That is not my forte. I know enough to be dangerous, so to speak. But what we're talking about is the actual realistic data of launching a projectile from any given firearm and the results of that projectile meeting other surfaces. And those surfaces that we're particularly interested in are those in and around a home environment, an office environment, a place of worship environment, a box store, pretty much our exterior, interior environments that we spend our lives in. That is not to exclude vehicles. That's something we actually do a fair amount of work and study with as well. And we can certainly get into that topic. Because of the depth and breadth of the amount of data that we've been collecting since 2017 related to these different surfaces and materials, I'm probably going to limit some of the more in-depth conversation to interior, exterior walls, so that we can more or less look at the general civilian and or off-duty or on-duty law enforcement officer and how those projectiles that they may be launching could potentially affect the atmosphere surrounding them. So that exterior environment beyond where the projectile is intended to go, whether it be intentional or unintentional, we'll speak to that a bit. So for now, I'll just kind of lay out the avenue, and that would be we are looking at a 90-degree angle, so straight on with up to 4 walls fully constructed, starting on an interior wall. So we have gypsum wallboard, 2x6 wood construction with studding on centers as normal building code for interior architecture in the Northeast, which is, for those that are in other areas, would probably be a bit stronger, closer on center than other areas because of snow load and hurricane load on roofs. So all those things are tied together. So again, we have gypsum wallboard, 2x6 construction, wood frame, fully insulated. So a lot of homes don't actually have full insulation between the walls, but in order to give the most bang for the buck and see what kind of surfaces we were passing through and collecting, we went ahead and insulated all walls. Second layer would have been gypsum wallboard as well. So standard sheetrock, 1/2 inch on both sides. We did that 3 times over. So in other words, 3 of those interior walls fully constructed. And then the exterior wall would have had gypsum wallboard on what would be the interior side, fully studded, 2x6 construction, fully insulated. On the back side, it would be sheathed with 1.5 inch plywood. So standard sheathing, and then a vapor waterproof barrier, Tyvek or otherwise. And then beyond that, we've done several different studies, one that included standard cedar shake shingling. So the layers of single shake cedars, which is quite common in some parts of the country, including Northeast. And also we used a composite concrete wallboard. So we cover several aspects and ranges of building types on the exteriors with that. And just a spoiler alert, when it does penetrate the exterior, it doesn't matter what that exterior is covered with, it just simply keeps going. So we'll speak to both types and where.
So you're talking like brick or siding or whatever it may be?
Yeah, so we didn't bother dealing with any vinyl siding or any other lightweight composite siding because it literally doesn't stop anything. A BB gun will pass through it. And we did not do brick. So one thing we have not covered yet, but we will be in the future, is masonry construction. We have gone into masonry walls. So those that are questioning whether or not a masonry wall in typical masonry construction, such as Q block, standard concrete block, will that stop and or deter projectiles? We did do some of that, but we haven't done full-blown construction. So I'm just kind of doing that as a disclaimer so people understand the difference.
Sure.
So I'm talking full-blown construction, on the interior.
Are you throwing electrical and pipes and things in there as well?
Not yet, but that is another step forward.
Okay.
As you and I have spoken about, we are continuing these studies, and in order to get into that depth and breadth, we're going to be seeking some sponsorship to help us with materials and cost of doing this, as well as potentially an indoor location to do the studies.
Yeah.
Yep. But yeah, a lot more being planned. And for those out there listening, if you do have interest in what your projectile of choice may do, we are certainly open to listening. And if you have ammunition, Pete, that you want to send to be tested, we're more than happy to do that. Same thing with firearms. If you have a specific firearm that you're questioning barrel length action type and you want us to look at that, and it's something that we don't presently have available, we would certainly be interested in either having somebody come here with that and or providing to local FFL, and then we'll work with the materials from there. So always open to other avenues.
Good. So you've been doing these studies in New Hampshire.
That is correct.
At your facilities. So this is an outdoor facility that you're doing these testing in. So talk about your environment conditions that you're working in during these tests.
So far we've done 3 different studies, 3 different classes related to ballistics and materials, and they have been outdoors, as you just said. The range has full berms. Exterior berm to the back would be probably in excess of almost 20 feet in height. The surface area is covered in sand mostly. I would say very fine, loose gravel in other places, but then coated in sand. And other places there might be some hardened dirt, but mostly a sand surface on the bottom. Why that's important is a lot of these projectiles would deviate in a downward trajectory and end up meeting what would be the floor. And then that surface, and depending upon the lubricity of that surface and also the density of that surface, where the projectile then continues its trajectory. In our case, being sand, it has been semi-absorbed but redirected into that back berm. So if you translate that into a street environment, we're talking about bituminous concrete or asphalt or standard concrete and or hard dirt, whatever your particular environment has. And those would be more quote unquote reflective materials. Mm-hmm. So they would be less likely to absorb as much of that trajectory and energy that's left, and probably redirect that round with more force. So we are still seeing rounds redirected with a tremendous amount of force where they didn't pass through the fourth wall. But be it known that there's still a fair amount of energy behind those rounds as they travel and deviate in trajectory. As far as environment, so a lot of the studies that we do for other materials, and this has nothing to do with the ballistics and the material study, but when we're helping out firearms companies or gear companies look at their products, we are a 24/7, 12-month out of the year program. I call it training for all conditions because we literally are practicing in all conditions for all conditions. And that also includes when we're doing travel training. Places that we visit and have worked in the past have been Florida, Texas, Illinois, and some other states. So there's a wide variety of climatic and environmental influence that changes certain aspects of these things. Where I am here in New Hampshire, these tests have usually occurred in the summer or fall, sometimes with rain, sometimes without. We have not done it in a winter condition, which would make some of the materials mildly more fragile, only because they aren't intended to be in a unheated condition. Mm-hmm. Specifically, some of that gypsum wallboard. Yeah. Not to be said that you could have an unheated home that, especially as an LE practitioner, you might walk into and discharge around, in which case that more fragile surface would be, important to know how that works. So we will
doing a bust on a crack house or something like that.
Well, yeah, absolutely.
Trailer park.
Fortunately, here in New Hampshire, we have more of a problem with methamphetamines and the manufacturing of such.
Same here.
Yeah.
Same here. Yeah. It's rampant. It's rampant.
Yeah, here in Tennessee too. Same.
Yeah, it's
all over the country, pretty much.
Yeah. Yeah, it's scary stuff.
But you wanted to do these studies. I think we were talking, before doing the show, is you specifically were doing these studies for law enforcement information.
That's correct, and also civilians. The primary audience was for law enforcement because the opportunity for them to discharge around and have a pass through of soft matter, meaning a human target or dog, whatever the case may be, and having a pass through and then going into the surrounding environment materials is much greater than it would be for the civilian counterpart. However, I see just as much value, and I always put just as much value in the civilian counterpart. It's just that the the ratio is going to be higher with law enforcement.
Oh, absolutely, and that makes perfect sense. But as we see in the civilian market, what happens with the LE usually translates to the civilian market as well. It can be just as useful and helpful.
It absolutely does, and we do invite local law enforcement officers to join us so that they can learn firsthand and see firsthand. Because there's nothing like reading information or having me, dictate it out. But when you actually see it yourself, minds are blown. Eyes are opened, and those officers then take that experience back to other officers and share it. And that is really why I started doing this, so that they would have in their own mind's eye an understanding of what happens when you discharge your firearm and it either A, does not hit the intended target, or B, doesn't hit intended target, but that trajectory continues because of the energy. And then what is the consequences with the background?
Yeah.
We've all read and heard the stories of those consequences, and it's hard. It's part of the job, unfortunately. And those men and women out there have to live with that, and that's a horrible thing. But if you have a little bit of this information, sometimes it might change your thought pattern in looking at your background if they have that opportunity during that event.
Well, it could give them the opportunity to plan ahead of time too. And if they're going into, let's say, they're going into a raid, it's like a trailer park or a subdivision, then they have the understanding that, my bullet has the potential of going this direction and hitting these other houses that are, nearby. So when they go in for their tactical planning for that, on how they go in and execute and plan for that mission. I would think that this information, once they've learned it and the ramifications that their bullets will have on different building materials, how they execute that.
Absolutely, Marty. That would be referring mostly to the team environment and those that actually get the most training. And I'm trying to give not only those individuals some background and data to chew on and understand and analyze, but more so the actual street cop and or patrol officer in a vehicle that may or may not have that level of training. So if they can have at least this data in the back of their mind, hopefully they can be looking at their backgrounds in that event, which is all happening in a split second for these folks. So there's no judgment here. I am simply providing some information, data, and background so that we all can hopefully benefit from it.
Yeah, absolutely. And, when you talk about the foot cop, they're usually the first responders to a active shooter situation.
100%. Yes, sir.
So, this information will be valuable. So let's talk about the different rounds and firearms that you are conducting the test with.
Absolutely. So
hey, Brian.
We have done,
Brian.
3. Sorry, Brian, go ahead.
Hey, sorry. No, I got to duck out for a meeting here. I apologize for having to boogie, but thanks for letting me be a part of this. This is an awesome conversation that I can't wait to listen to the rest of with our listeners.
Do you have anything that you want to make sure that we cover? Do you have any questions or anything like that you want to go ahead and get out there and we can cover them?
My one request for the data, Ken, as you come out with it, is worst case analysis. Stuff like pipes and that sort of thing help us. And so starting to come up with rules of thumb for, a general load and a general gun of how many walls you go through, that'd be really cool, because most of us are, while we do want to understand how behavior is, we also want that rule of thumb in our back pocket of what's, how many walls is this round and gun combo. So I'm sure you're already doing that, but I think that's the obvious request from the peanut gallery as you start to nail this stuff down. So thanks a lot for working on it. I'm thrilled to be hearing about it. And look forward to the rest of the conversation here. Thanks all.
Likewise, Brian.
See you, Brian. Thanks.
All right. Take care. Bye.
See ya.
So to that, I guess that kind of gets into the rounds and the firearms that you're using and testing out.
Absolutely. So we typically do this as a class environment, and invite individuals to bring their typical home defense and or duty defense firearms. So in the case of LE, they're bringing patrol rifles, handguns, and shotguns. Our civilian counterparts are doing exactly the same thing. They just might be using a different brand, different barrel length, suppressed, unsuppressed. It kind of matches. The tier 1 civilian is doing the same thing that LE, if not even higher than what they have.
Yeah.
So
I would
there's a mix there.
I think probably the biggest variation would be the type of ammo they're using.
And that is true.
Between civilian and LE.
Yeah, so related to the ammunition, we also invite folks to bring what it is that they're using for personal defense. And I also put a strong data analysis towards regular ball ammo, FMJ, full metal jacket. The reason for that is the availability of it is much higher than defensive ammunition. It's much more common.
Cheaper.
If you, you go
more
to
affordable. More
box
people are going to
store.
carry that. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And the likelihood of it being in your magazines, if you've been to the range and you have an instance that's going sideways and just grab a magazine, it most likely is going to have ball ammo in it, not the $2 or $3 a round high-end defensive ammo. So, given that, we put a higher level of data analysis on the FMJ. Sure. But we also do your TAP rounds and other duty rounds provided by other companies. As far as the firearms go, we literally run the gamut. Glocks, Smith & Wessons. We haven't done much with revolvers, but we have done a few. Mostly these are pistols. Mm-hmm. SIGs, HKs, CZs. It pretty much runs the gamut.
High point? You doing any high points?
I won't let a high point on my range unless you need an anchor for an overhead or something.
What about?
No offense to folks that make high point, but it's just not in our genre.
and I don't know if you've gone down the 22 route yet or not. Are you testing the 22s as well? Because that's pretty popular around.
We do. 22 long rifle specifically is very, very common cartridge. So we have tested it, and we will continue to test it. It's out there in mass. People have 22s. If you own a firearm, you've mostly got a 22 of some sort. So that's pretty popular, and it's popular for hunting as well. So yeah, that's a good one to have around.
Yep.
Very good. And you say the majority of your tests are revolve around the pistol?
Actually, it's a pretty good split between pistols, rifles, and shotguns.
Okay.
I don't really want to do more or less on any. They all have their values, and when it comes again to law enforcement, like we're speaking to, there are more and more patrol carbines in vehicles these days. So I think that's a pretty important aspect. A lot of our homeowners / civilian defenders are concentrating on carbines because they are relatively easy to shoot. And being we do have the legal authority, thank you. And I'm using that loosely because of the, again, our constitutional conversation, but stabilized braces have really opened up a whole nother realm for lighter weight carbines and or shorter barrel, i.e. lighter weight, for individuals that have a disability that might make it more difficult for them to yield and use a full-size firearm, and or somebody that's just smaller and lighter in stature. Or we just want to be able to conceal it as a quote-unquote truck gun or ruck gun, meaning a backpack type gun. So, all those things are points. So we literally cover all those types. As far as shotguns go, we typically focus on defensive shotguns, 18.5-inch barrels, sometimes up to 20. But if anybody's kind of looking for, the velocity and patterning, we are talking about between 18 and 20-inch barrels. Related to rifle calibers, we are looking at anything from 8-inch barrels all the way up to 20-inch barrels, depending upon what caliber and what firearm we're looking at. We have not really dove into precision scoped rifle type calibers or using those barrel lengths for the extra velocity. It just doesn't make sense when you start looking at the other data.
Right.
I'm sure I'd add some of it at some point. Where we have used bigger caliber firearms is against vehicles specifically. So we have gone as high as 50 BMG out of Barrett's and otherwise. So we actually have done those tests.
On vehicles?
On vehicles specifically, yes.
Yeah.
We have actually also tested against masonry, multiple blocks of concrete, but not anything else, simply because we already know what the projectile is going to do and where it's going to end up. So just for the savings of the time and the expenditure, we have not done those tests.
So let's talk about let's start with pistols. I guess would be a good way to start, and then the different calibers and what you're seeing against these building materials, and I mean, we could start with the 22 and work our way up, or however you want to do that progressively.
Yeah, I'll speak to some of them with more depth and a little less on.
Yeah.
We'll concentrate most of our time related to pistols on the 9mm because it is the most popular round these days. We also have some data on 40 Smith & Wesson. There's a lot of LE still using 40 Smith & Wesson, a lot of agencies also, but many are transitioning over or back to a 9mm. We also done some with 45 ACP and 22 long rifle, as well as 5.7. So we have a mix, but we'll concentrate on the 9mm. But to go to your question of the 22 long rifle from a pistol, much lower velocity, those pistols have been 5-inch barrel lengths. And when shot against, again, this construction, I'll just kind of go through it in brief. We have 4 walls, the 4th wall, an exterior for the outside. So everything is gypsum wallboard, fully studded, fully insulated. And then that outside has sheathing as well as having either cedar shakes or composite wallboard.
Are you getting as specific as putting paint and wallpaper on there as well?
I haven't added that extra material. We might consider that in the future. One thing we won't get into as much in this conversation, as you and I talked about, we might add some extra episodes, is we have actually added solid wood doors to the same 4 levels of walls, added a 5th wall behind it, which would be an exterior first. In other words, that would mimic shooting through your home and into the neighbor's home, and how that had effects. We also had vehicular studies where we added an exterior wall behind the vehicle. So in other words, if you had to shoot, say in your front yard, defending yourself, and it went through a vehicle and then it went to a neighbor, would you have penetration through their exterior wall? Right. We'll get into those at another point, along with floors, actually. So floors is a big one.
Floors would be big, yeah, especially in 2-story homes and apartment complexes. Those type things.
Absolutely.
I didn't ask you this. Are you doing a ballistic gel dummy as some of this as well?
Okay. I am. So some of these tests, and I'll actually go through these with some of these handgun cartridges that we're going to talk about in brief. These actually include a ballistic torso as being the first surface met. And that ballistic torso is full density. Essentially, you'd need to be Arnold Schwarzenegger in his prime to be the size of this ballistic dummy. So the typical human being is about 6 inches, 7 inches in depth from breast to backbone. Yeah. Obviously, some people have greater depth to themselves and others have less. But that 6 to 7 inches seems to be fairly common. This dummy that we're using, I believe, is 8 inches in depth. I'd have to measure.
There is a lot of obesity in this country as well. So.
I've got a couple extra myself. I'm not going to talk.
Hey, I'm one of them.
Right on. But the point to know about that ballistic torso, it is full FBI rated ballistic gelatin. It does not have bone structure or organ structure introduced. And that's just because I'm paying for this material. Yeah. If we get a sponsor that throws us some stuff, wants to support that, we'll certainly do that in the future. But those particular torsos cost in excess of $1,200-$1,400. The ones that I'm working with are $500.
Yeah. Are you making your own ballistic? You pouring your own stuff into it, or are you just buying them pre-made?
So I purchase it pre-made from the ballistic gel company. However, I do have the mold to be able to remold it. So for those that don't know, ballistic gelatin can be melted, and you can remove the projectiles and or trace elements from it, and then re-pour it.
Yeah.
And it can be done, 5-6 times. I'm not an expert on that, but the directions do give you that capacity. And really, all you're doing is losing the clear color that it is. It ends up taking on some of the color from the carbonization
Powder
and other
and
materials
stuff, yeah.
go through it. Yep.
Yeah.
So yeah, for these we do include that ballistic torso, and I'll tell you when we're talking about the study that does not include the torso. But
Sure.
for these handgun rounds, your 22 long rifle, just to give that clear and get that out there from a handgun, it definitely goes through that ballistic torso. Whether it's a hollow point or whether it's a blunt point or whether it's a round nose, it passes right through. It doesn't know any different. And then it passes typically through 3 walls. So we've had an arrest on some of those, depending upon the velocity of the specific 22 long rifle cartridge. Some of them are, 40, I think 43 grain, 44 grain, 40 grain, down to 37 grain. And I don't know the velocities on them. I don't have it off the top of my head, but they are arresting usually in that 3rd wall. So that's a pretty good truck for a 22 long rifle. Yeah, those little guys right there. If we up the ante a little bit and we go to the different varieties of the 22s that have more energy with them, those have made it well into that 3rd wall, and some have actually passed out through it. So if you go to 22 Magnum, they will pass through all those walls. You wouldn't think that the little projectile would be able to manage that, but it does. I'll scoot over. It's all right. Just start talking about 9mm,
Yeah.
because that's where
I think that's
really
probably
have
where most people want to hear about.
Yeah, absolutely.
For the
So
pistol.
just-
yeah.
Sorry, Marty, go ahead.
No, I was just saying for the pistol, that's probably what most people want to hear about. Now, I think there's a lot of questions about the shotguns and the
Yep.
rifles, because the AR, has taken on as probably one of the most popular home defense tools that there is. So, but yeah, go ahead.
It is. We'll dispel a couple myths related to that too for you.
Oh yeah, let's do some facts to fight the myths. I like that.
Yeah.
So just real quick, I'm on your Instagram page too. So if there's an example of what you're talking about that I could pull up for our video audience while you're talking about it, I'd be happy to do that. And for our listeners who aren't, you can go to Ken's Instagram page. It's Ken Allen Training, Ken_Allen_training, and he's got some videos posted up of these tests that he's going to be talking about. Do you have a YouTube channel?
I don't. I should.
Okay. No, that's fine. I just thought that might be easier, but we can go to the Instagram.
Just as kind of speaking to what we're talking about here, you're actually hovering over one of the videos, and that would be looks like it's one of the rifle videos. Yeah, so that's a PWS MK111. So that's a 11-inch gun that happens to have a suppressor on it by Dead Air. And that video is speaking to how that tap round tumbles and still does a massive amount of penetration. What you're looking at there is that final wall. That is the 4th wall, and it does actually penetrate into that 4th wall. So that's a law enforcement specific round designed to stop, and it travels a great distance through a lot of surfaces. So that's just kind of the one things that we really trying to get folks to be aware of. If they go through soft matter and or they miss a target specifically, that round's going to keep going, even though it was designed to slow down and stop.
Yeah.
So anyway, there's a bunch of other examples that are on my page if you all want to go and take a look, and there'll be more posted as time goes on. So far, I think we've posted up some 5.56, 7.62 by 39, 9mm, 9mm HST. I believe there's also a 5.45 video up there as well. So there's a bunch, and there's more coming. So
38. I see. I'm looking at this board. I've got it on pause right here. I see. Looks like you got a 38. There's a 9mm. Some specific kind of 9mm. I can't read your handwriting. There's a 223. There's a 22 LR that I see on this board. So as you're going through, you're marking each hole, each wall, And
That's correct.
according
So what we do is we go ahead and pace off about a 10-meter distance from the first surface, and we go ahead and fire that firearm into the first surface from that 10-meter mark, and then start tracking where the hits are. And we label each round on its entrance and on its exit, so we can see where it starts to yaw and keyhole, and also the difference in trajectory where it starts to change and orient direction. What you're seeing there with those two cardboard targets in between is there's a solid wood door. It's the first piece that's talking to, and whether or not somebody standing directly behind the door would be impacted. So we're tracking that trajectory immediately through the door to see if there's going to be deviation passing through the solid wood.
Gotcha.
So yeah, for anyone that wants to take a look, please check out the page. It's Ken_Allen_training. You can also go to my website, which is www.kenallentraining.us, and link you back to here. But yeah, so good stuff there. Yeah, if you want to click over to another one, you can just scan down. You'll find more. Those are shooting outside of vehicles. If you go just a little bit further, I think there's probably some more in there.
That looks like just training.
Yeah, I know there's one in there somewhere. It might be further down the page.
I'm scanning. While I'm scanning, you go ahead and talk.
All right, so yeah, keep having a look. There might be a handgun one coming up. There's a rifle one there, I think. Nope, there's not. Sorry. Anyway, so let's talk 9mm. So this particular study, yep, there's one there actually. We'll see which one that is. So I believe that's 9mm HST. Is that what that says?
Yes.
So we're going to talk right to this study. So we're going to let folks see that. You can see the round goes through that ballistic gel torso. And again, look at the density of that torso. It's not slight. That round impacts, it starts to flower or to create that mushroom effect that we look for from defensive ammunition. And in that case, it passes through wall 1 and it entered and hit stud in wall 2 on the first round. We then, if we hit a stud, we do additional rounds to see where it goes. Mm-hmm. And we had additional rounds actually go through the third wall, even though it's starting to deviate, starting to leaf and or expand. It deviated trajectory after the third wall, exited third wall, went to the ground just before hitting that fourth wall. However, when it hit the ground, it then hit the berm with significant enough energy that we could conclude that it would have at least entered that fourth wall, but we're not going to state whether it would exit or not because we didn't collect that data.
Gotcha.
But that, again, that's a 9mm Federal HST 124 grain plus P defensive round. Spear Gold Dot 124 plus P did the same thing. So these rounds that we typically think that we're going to be, firing into a threat and having end in the threat, that's not the case at all. I do not know what would happen if we introduced a significant amount of bone, but I can ascertain by seeing what happens when it hits a stud that it's not going to matter if it hits bone or not. It's going to travel through that threat and then start traveling through other materials that are behind that threat.
If anything, deflection is what you're going to get from
exactly. And we do see that in a lot of the tests. One thing of note is a lot of the testing that we see that is, FBI type testing or otherwise, the ballistic gelatin tests you look at are usually done in a 12 or 18 or 24 inch block. So that round is being tracked through the depth of that block, which is great for seeing what's going to happen related to wound channeling, where that wound channel starts to expand, where the tumbling might take effect, where it starts to deviate. But the reality of that is, as we talked about earlier, a human being is only so thick, and they're not 12 inches thick for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So we're trying to, again, work more in a realm of reality versus just looking for ballistic data to share on the expansion of a certain projectile.
Yeah. I'm glad. if you don't mind,
Please.
I'm glad you said that about the gelatin. Obviously, I make my living off of selling ammunition, and so many people these days get so wrapped around the gelatin thing, the FBI's protocol and all this stuff. And yes, we do it because I have to show my customers that, because 99% of them are so wrapped around that. But I try to combat it and say exactly what you said, because there's so many other variables. Shooting gelatin at FBI spec, yeah, that's great to see what the bullet's going to do. And essentially, it's really not introducing any, real world scenarios into the bullet. So yeah, it's great to see, your expansion cavity and your penetration and stuff like that. But real world, people just don't get it. So they get wrapped around that part of, the gelatin thing, and, oh, well, my carry ammo penetrates, 18 inches, and all this, and that's best. But anyways, I was really glad to hear you say that, because, that's the truth.
Thank you, Pete. I appreciate that a lot. And I would certainly love to work with you further as we do more of these studies. So that maybe we can help provide data that would be useful to you and to your customers.
I would I'd be honored to be able to work with you. That'd be great.
Well,
thank you.
The ballistic gels, as you're talking about for the civilians, I mean, it's a marketing tool. It's great to help people sell their ammo, but like you said, you made a great point, is that it's irrelevant. It doesn't really tell you what the bullet does or can do. It's a visual effect that people have gotten hung up on, and
it really is. It is just simply a marketing tool, and
on these ballistic gels too, these dummies. I mean, I noticed that you guys aren't. They're just plain gel. There's no clothing on it. You don't have like jackets or shirts, because all that has an effect on a trajectory and the force of the bullet and everything like that too. So
it absolutely does. Absolutely does. It creates a whole nother surface.
Yeah.
So to keep things as simple as possible.
Sure.
So that we're looking more at the background. That's why we have not clothed the gel dummies.
Yeah. Because you're looking more for the background type effect. But as your studies get more involved, and hopefully, we'll get some funding for these, is that something that you're going to look at doing, is putting,
absolutely,
realistic clothing and whatnot, like a sweatshirt or a blue jean jacket or a whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. We spoke earlier to the fact that we train in all seasons and in all conditions, and that is one thing that we impress upon our students and others that we speak to on a regular basis, is we have to continually change what we're doing related to our clothing and our kit because of the surface. Mm-hmm. Any sort of lubricity that it has, the density. If you are wearing a plate carrier, non-plate carrier, chest rig, non-chest rig, concealed carry, trying to get at that gear, the more layers we add to it, we need to work through that. So I think that you're absolutely on point. And
I'm kind of getting off track because we're just talking about surfaces right now, and so let's stick to that. I don't want to confuse our listeners as to exactly what we're talking about, but
you got it.
Alyssa knows a thing or two about firearms. The gun store where she works and the folks she instructs would vouch for that. She spends most of her time on the range and in the classroom, teaching others about firearms and the fundamentals of shooting. On her days off, you'll likely catch her somewhere in the backcountry with her favorite firearm, a Kel-Tec KS7. At just over 26 inches, this short, slim second cousin to the KSG is lighter, but no less lethal. The shotgun's 18.5-inch barrel offers plenty of velocity, and its ample magazine tube provides a healthy dose of firepower with its 7+1 shell capacity, her go-to for home protection. Alyssa loves the carry handle and fiber optic sights she got on her first KS7, but is equally enamored with the Picatinny rail kit she put on her second. Why settle for one when you can add another to your already awesome collection of Kel-Tecs? Innovation Performance. Kel-Tec.
We talked about the 9mm. So let's move on up and let's go to a shotgun or a rifle. Let's do the rifle, then we'll do shotgun last.
All right, we can do that. Let me switch over a little bit. So just so we know, when we're talking about the rifle and the rifle ammo, we did go ahead and fire through the ballistic dummy, just like we talked about, for the first part of the data that I'm going to offer you, and that would be for the full metal jackets. We did not, however, do studies yet with the ballistic gelatin for any of the defensive rifle rounds. Reason for that is because of the extra destruction that it would do to the ballistic dummy, and we didn't have the ability to replace the ballistic dummy during that test,
Gotcha.
which it might end up requiring. So we're looking at this as a pass-through with our FMJ rounds. So I'll start with 5.56 and just standard 5.56 when it is launched out of a 16-inch barrel. We had Daniel Defense out there. We had Sig Sauer out there. We've had HK out there. We've had IWI out there and others, both in ARs as well as Galils and other versions of those. So 5.56 PMC, FMJ, 55 grain, when related to that same standard that we looked at earlier of those 4 walls, it passes through 3-4 walls and will lodge in studding in the 4th wall. When it's refired and does not hit the studding, it passes completely through all 4 walls. The energy hitting the berm is still pretty stout, and there's very little tumbling or deviation in the trajectory with the FMJ. When we amp that up and we go to 63 grain, and we're using just a lead projectile, so that would not be a steel core projectile. We have the same result, except when it does hit that 4th wall studding, it did exit. If we want to switch over a little bit and look at having a steel core projectile, that's kind of the game changer. And this is where there's going to be a lot of people perking up and going, say, what? That's not what we typically hear. We have done multiple studies with SS-109 and other steel core 5.56 projectiles, and they typically will start tumbling after meeting that first surface. And they keyhole on every surface thereafter, usually in a fairly straight orientation. In other words, the trajectory stays fairly true, but it usually will lodge and or stop in either the 3rd or 4th wall. There have been instances where it has broken the exterior siding that we've applied, whether it be the cedar shake siding or the concrete composite siding of the 4th wall, but it did not actually exit. So that big question that comes, which round of most general rounds does not pass through all the walls? It actually is that steel core ammo. So yeah, contrary to popular belief, that's the one that will slow down and stop. And
why do you think that is?
I believe it's because of the tumbling effect that's happening because of the steel core itself. Yeah, it's not holding a straight trajectory. It's not ice picking through the surfaces. It's actually starting to tumble almost immediately. Once it hits that first surface and it starts to collect a little bit of exterior material through that gypsum wallboard, it starts to crumble, just like you're seeing there with that 5.45 that's being spoken to in the video presently.
Yeah.
So, yeah, very interesting aspects. When we go down to the 5.56 Hornady, 75 grain tap round made for LE specifically, first wall enters exit, second wall starts to yaw, so it's starting to tumble and keyhole an entry through that second wall, exiting as a full keyhole on the second wall, going into the 3rd wall as a full keyhole, and exiting the 3rd wall as a full keyhole. But the trajectory has changed enough and deviating that it did not hit the 4th wall and it went to the berm. So just knowing that we have that hollow point style round, it is collecting material. It's starting to yaw and it is deviating its orientation. Doesn't mean it will go through the fourth wall. It potentially might. As we've reshot it, it did. So if you hit studding and or it just starts to deviate direction enough, it could not pass through that wall. It might hit something else in the room, whether it be a piece of furniture or otherwise. But we do have secondary reflection upon that it did pass through all four walls and punch the berm. And that's out of an 11-inch barrel, 5.56 ammo. When we went to 69 grain soft point, it actually did the same exact thing, and it went through the fourth wall exit and hit the berm with energy. As you're seeing here, we're talking about 5.45 by 39. So now we're getting into our Kalash community. Yeah. That is 5.45 by 39, 59 grain FMJ Golden Tiger. I believe that is a CW Gunworks AK-74, 16-inch barrel. That round, as you can see, starts to tumble a bit. It did go through the second wall, begins tumbling. It keyholes into the third wall. And in that third wall, the downward trajectory starts to take it such that it hits the ground surface rather than going to that fourth wall. So that deviation downward took it into the dirt, and then it hit the berm in the back with still a tremendous amount of energy. So when folks are asking, is 5.45 better than 2.23, 5.56? In this type of instance related to these materials in these environments, they are probably equal.
Getting the same
when we
results.
transition, go ahead, Marty. Sorry.
No, I just say you're getting basically the same results.
Yeah, pretty much same results all the way through. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
What 5.45 ammo was this?
Yeah, no problem, Pete. No, it was not. It was Golden Tiger. It was 59 grain MJ. Yeah.
Okay, I got you. Okay.
Yeah, I have not actually tested 7 and 6 extensively yet.
I have tested it quite a bit. And 7 and 6 does some wild stuff. When you go to test it, be prepared for 90-degree deflection.
Whoa.
And I mean, no kidding. We shot it into gelatin. This was bare gelatin. This was the first test. It literally went in about 8 inches and took a 90-degree turn, went through the roof of the building. It's wild stuff.
Oh my gosh.
We had them go through gelatin, 6-8 inches and take a hard dive in through the tables, everything. So it's really, really very unpredictable ammo. But that 7 and 6 has got that hollow cavity. So the way they designed it was to induce tumbling.
Right.
Well, it certainly does that.
That's good to know.
Tumbles and does jumping jacks and sounds like the magic bullet from JFK.
Right.
Yeah. After the one went through the roof and then one went through the table like that, we're like, listen, we're not going to shoot this indoors anymore, just because we don't know where this stuff's going to go. So yeah, it's really wild stuff. So
very interesting. That actually does mimic the experiences that we've been seeing with the 5.45 as far as seeing a lot of deviation. We haven't had that dramatic, but
that's pretty dramatic. Yeah, 90.
Yeah, that's very dramatic.
Going through the ceiling.
Yeah, it was nuts. It actually went through right above the gelatin blocks we had, the lighting, and it went right through the lighting, through the ceiling. But I'm sure I'll send you some ammo after this, and I'll include some of that 7 and 6, so you don't have to source it.
Oh, that's awesome! Thank you, Pete. Much appreciated. Yep. So I'll conclude this part of the segment. Just speaking to 7.6239, we saw a video up there. That was an Arsenal 7.6239 107 that was then converted by CW Gunworks. Down in Miami. These guys are awesome. If you need any work done, please seek them out. There's also many others out there that are doing really quality work, and if you need suggestions, please ask. I know just about all of them and am impressed by all their work. We went ahead and we also tested, like I said, 7.6239. That was FMJ Golden Tiger, 123 grain. It passed through all four walls like butter. It travels very well. I believe one of the questions on the postings that were on your IG page, Mark, was related to barrier penetration and 7.6239 versus 5.56. There is no comparison. 7.6239 is a barrier penetrator.
Yep.
That's one of the reasons why it's one of the ones that I focus on personally. But yeah, so it was complete pass through as expected.
Did you have a lot of deviation in the tumbling, or
No.
just a rocket?
Right through.
It's a laser.
Right through. And when it did hit studding, it just took the stud with it. So it has a tremendous amount of energy. That projectile moves pretty linearly. Yeah. It doesn't usually deviate unless there is an angle introduced. So because we did shoot this at 90 degrees, it was hitting a stud at 90 degrees, and therefore it would deviate slightly, but it would actually go through the stud rather than glancing off. However, I have seen with other materials, if you do introduce an angle, it will capture some of that angle, and that'll track that trajectory. So just a little bit of background on that. We did also test 7.6251 or 308. We tested those through IWI Galil Aces, 11-inch, actually 11.8 inch for those that matter in tracking on the ballistics. One of the stabilizer brace pistols. I really, really like that gun as a backpack gun, truck gun, or otherwise. 7.62 by 51 literally does it all. But again, it passes through all that material, goes straight through, just like 7.62 by 39. When we went to 7.62 by 54R, same thing, straight through. And 30-06 out of a hunting rifle. That happened to be an 18-inch gun, straight through, no questions asked. And it hits the berm. All 4 of those cartridges hit the berm with authority. Wow. So even passing through the material.
So going through ballistic gel, going through 4 walls, and still popping the berm.
Popping the berm hard. Yeah, very much so. So there's a strong distinction, as you might imagine. You're talking a full-blown battle cartridge or hunting cartridge versus a 5.56 or a 7.62 5.4. Anyway, yeah, any of those smaller cartridges. Big difference.
So I'm going to say the conclusion, but what somebody could surmise from that is, if you're looking for a good home defense round, you probably don't want to go with the 7.62 by 39.
Yes and no. It depends upon where you live, right? So if you are more rural and living with more space between homes, wooded or ranch or otherwise, where you might need to barrier penetrate, that might be a consideration that you consider that might outweigh using that heavier cartridge. But for the safety of the interior
and people inside, with your family, your kids, your whatever, pets, your odds of that penetrating and hitting someone else are a lot greater.
It is. So from our studies, and only this data alone, the suggestion would be pointing towards 5.56 and with a steel core, only because we have seen enough rounds tumbling almost immediately, hitting the first surface and slowing down the most in comparison to other rounds. Now, that's still going through 4 full walls, but it's arresting in that last wall typically. We have had some breaks, as I said, through exterior wallboard, but we usually don't have a strong exit. We have had some exit, not all the time. So of all the rounds, that's the one that stood out as not exiting the most.
Yeah.
That's not conclusive. That's just through the small sample sets that we've done.
Yeah. And again, this is all relative on how you want to use this data. Is if you're looking for barrier penetration, then yes, this 7.62 by 39. If you're not looking, you're looking for as little barrier penetration as possible. Then you got to look at the smaller rounds, the different rounds.
Right. And and hearing the data that Pete was bringing to light related to 5.45, that would actually steer me away from 5.45, just because it's so volatile in its trajectory change.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, we're really looking to try to track the predictability, as you just said, Marty, that is going to let us know whether or not, if we do miss and or hit soft matter and it passes through, we can then have a general estimate of where it might end up.
Right.
Maybe. But all that said, that takes me to shotguns, if you don't mind.
The big ones. Yes.
It is. And, we talk a lot about carbines because folks love their carbines and they're using them for home defense or as their, first tier firearm. However, shotguns used to be the home defense, personal defense, and LE long gun. And I'm a strong supporter of having a shotgun in your quiver. And those that need and or want personal defense, shotgun really is your most versatile firearm. And I've said it before, we noted it in the last podcast. If you're traveling, it's the least restricted firearm. So, you can check on the restrictions. You must check the restrictions of all states while you're doing travel and or any place you're planning on going, especially local municipalities. They're the ones that typically have the more odd gun laws. But you're usually less restricted with a shotgun. With that, I did not, so just kind of disclaimer, I did not bother testing any of the typical hunting shotgun gauges. So I have not done 16 gauge, have not done 10 gauge, I have not done 28 gauge, and I didn't do 20 gauge either, only because it's not a typical law enforcement cartridge, and 12 gauge typically is more prevalent. So we will do 20 gauge at some point, just so folks know the difference. We'll also blend in 410 at some point, but for now we're strictly focusing on 12 gauge.
Gotcha. Makes sense.
And again, for those that are tracking true ballistics and want to know about velocities, we are using 18.5-inch shotguns. So that's the barrel length. Usually either an open choke, no choke. So straight cylinder bore. And the ones that we've been using
pumps,
are
semi,
both. So that's really good to know because the semi does take a slight amount of energy off of it. For the semis, we've been using Benelli M4s. And for the pumps, we have been using a combination of Mossberg 590A1s and Remington 870s, and usually the LE Magnum model. There have been others in the mix. We have mixed in a couple Wingmasters and others alike with slightly longer barrels, but we don't really find that there's that much of a difference. It just reduces the patterning. Makes the pattern small because you have a longer barrel at that 10-meter distance that we're using.
Do you have some video on the shotgun?
Say again, I'm sorry?
Do you have some video on the shotgun that I could pull up real quick while you're talking about it?
I don't know if it's on there or not, Marty. I'm guessing no.
Okay.
So, we'll have to forego that one for the moment.
Sure.
We have done 3 different types of test studies with shotguns, and one that was a little bit more unique. We used the 3 walls that we spoke to earlier, but instead of introducing the 4th wall, we hung a 24-pound chunk of beef with bone in. So
you're feeling saucy that day, huh?
We literally and figuratively, yes. So the intent was to just see, related specifically to that was shot with 5.56 9mm HST and 12 gauge slugs and 12 gauge buckshot. When we did that specific study, again, 3 walls were used, same construction we've spoken to, but we wanted to see that if somebody was in that 3rd room, in outside the house or in another house, what would be the effect if it actually hit another human being or another animal, so on and so forth, whether it be a horse, dog, doesn't matter, with this same effect. Related to the shotgun, as you can imagine, the slug travels through everything. And if you look at the 4-wall test, it travels through all 4 walls. The big thing about shotgunning that you need to understand is the wad itself is still deadly.
Absolutely.
In most of the studies that we've had, when using traditional buckshot field loads or slugs, the wadding has ended up, and that's if we're using sabot slugs, that'd be wadding with slugs. Our wadding has either ended up in the first wall, so in the first surface, or in the case where it actually was in the middle of the pattern, it punched through and it broke the second wall. So it went through one complete wall, so 2 layers of wallboard through the insulation and hit the second wall, so a third layer of gypsum wallboard, breaking the surface but not penetrating it. So that's important to understand and realize, because a lot of folks don't understand that wadding is extremely dangerous, particularly even out to 35 meters. So it hasn't caught enough of the friction in its flight to slow down unless you're past that 35-meter mark. And we've seen some really valid, strong hits. So again, these tests are at 10 meters, and it has broken through that amount. Jeez. Now with the slugs, it goes right through. If you add, and we'll talk about this in a later episode, if you add a solid core door, a solid wood door to that, it'll go through that wood door, and it'll also keep going through those 4 walls, and it'll introduce itself into the neighbor's house. So just be that said, we'll skip over there.
With a slug.
A slug, yes,
yeah, okay.
Slug. 3/4 inch LE velocity slug. So that's actually a slower velocity slug than most. So we're typically using federal LE. So yeah, those slugs are a little bit downgraded in their velocity, and they're still passing through all that. When we did it with the 3 walls and the 24-pound meat test, it destroyed the meat. It went through all walls, and it literally split that meat in half.
Wow.
So tremendous amount of energy, even after going through those walls. So that's probably semi-expected by most. And this is where the questions typically come in. It's like, okay, well, buckshot. What about buckshot, Ken? And bird loads and others of the sort. I typically do not recommend bird shot. I know a lot of self-defense advocates say, well, because of overpenetration, we prefer you look at bird loads. Are they correct in the sense there's less overpenetration? Yes, absolutely. It'll still go through that first wall. Birdshot will penetrate that first wall. It typically arrests in the second to the third wall, depending upon the velocity and depending upon the material of the shot. So steel shot, so if you're utilizing goose or waterfowl rounds that are required in certain areas for steel shot silos, they travel further and through more material, as one might imagine, than lead. The lead tends to flatten itself and slow down its velocity a little bit sooner.
Yeah.
We did not test any 3.5-inch loads. We did not test any 3-inch loads. We were typically focusing on 2 3/4-inch loads for these specific tests, again, because it's the most common.
Yeah.
When we get into buckshot, so this gets kind of interesting. The types of buckshot that we utilized were standard double-aught buck. Again, we're using federal, the LE loads, and we also used standard, I think they're Fiocchi loads. The big difference between the two, when we look at it, is federal uses something called a flight control wadding, which keeps your patterning tight over distance. It's fantastic for many things, but your standard wadding allows your deviation of spread to be a much greater effect. So if you want greater spread, don't use flight control. If you want to keep more control over your spread or patterning, then flight control is the way to go. It is more expensive, but it actually really does the job. Oh, there you go. Awesome.
I got some Fiocchi buckshot here. Double up.
Yep, and it's great stuff. Highly reliable. Yep. And is that 9 pellet?
This is 9 pellet. Yep.
Pellet. Okay. Yep. And that's what we were testing as well.
Yep.
So high brass 9 pellet. Yep. Cool. I want to say that the LE loads, the flight controllers, are 8 pellet, but I might be misspoken. I'd have to check the actual specification on those.
I'm 98% sure it's 8. You're correct.
Cool. So let's start with the double-aught buck. Our standard double-aught buck, so that Fiocchi that you're speaking to, and others like it, because we have tested some others, UMC, Remington, and others like it, but that Fiocchi load right there, you might be surprised to hear that it'll actually go through all 4 walls. All right, so what happens is those little pellets are essentially 9mm projectiles, and The only real difference between those loads is the amount of spread on the patterning and then the deviation of such. So what we've experienced is at that 10-meter distance, we usually have a pattern of about 12 inches plus or minus on the initial impact, and then it starts to spread from there. It does go completely through and has exited with usually about 5 pellets to the exterior and then hitting the wall. So we're most likely losing 3 of those pellets, 4 of those pellets on some of the tests to studding. And because they are round, more surface area, we're finding that they're getting lodged in the 3rd and 4th wall studding. But we are still seeing, in some cases, 5 pellets exiting. And again, that's a 9mm projectile. It's .33, so it's still going and it's traveling out, and it's usually at about a 20 to 30 inch spread from its initial impact at that point. So overall distance, you're talking about plus or minus 15 meters as far as the overall distance that we've been testing. And that's plus the 10 meters to the shooter. So 25 meters overall, 15 meters on the actual materials.
Interesting.
Yeah. So and this is where it gets a little bit more interesting. So if we step that back and we use double-aught buck flight control, so it's federal product, and we go there, our first wall is introduced with a 3-inch pattern. And again, that really goes to show what that flight control wadding is capable of. That 3-inch padding, if the wad deviates, the wad will embed itself in that first wall. If the wad does not deviate, it travels through the center of that pattern and it travels with the pattern, and it will then lodge itself in the 2nd or 3rd wall, depending upon how much it's traveled. So again, the question about wadding, yes, it's dangerous.
So you saw the wadding go through at least 2 walls in that.
Yes. Yep. In most cases, so when I look over the amount of data that we've tracked, the average is usually 1 full wall and then lodging and or breaking the surface of the 2nd wall. So 3 layers of gypsum wallboard, 1 complete wall pass through. Yeah. That would be the average, but I have seen it actually travel through 2 full walls when it stays concentric with the center of the pattern. What it's also done, so this is also interesting.
Sure.
So, and again, this is on the averages of that specific ammo. We have seen about a 4-inch pattern onto the 2nd wall, a 4 to 5-inch pattern on the 3rd wall, and then when it breaks through the 4th wall, it does, in most cases, we see, again, 4 to 5 pellets exiting through that last wall. So we've lost a few pellets. Their energy has most likely been dissipated into studding, but the overall aspect of the pattern is usually about 10 inches, no more. So a very strong difference between the 3rd up to 30-inch pattern on
6-inch spread versus the 10-inch.
Yeah, that's significant, especially when you're looking at the background effect of something, right? So that's why that bit of information or data is important. The next type of buckshot that we go to is number 4. Why number 4? I mean, we could spend another hour talking just about shotgun shells and the ballistics of such related to personal and home defense and LE defense. But be it known, if anybody's doing any research on the different gauges and types of shot, number 4 buckshot is the next logical choice, and it does pretty well. So spoiler alert, if you are looking to skip ahead or you skipped way ahead, you want to know what home defense, personal defense, or LE load to use, it's number 4 buckshot. And that's over a carbine. And we'll talk to that and why right now. So which ones do we use? We use federal mostly, shot at those same distances. I'll just go through 2 of the data points here for you. And we start out with a 4-inch pattern, wadding not concentric with the pattern. So it embedded itself in that first layer of wallboard. However, the pattern then continued through with that similar 4 to 5-inch pattern, going through, entering and exiting wall 1, wall 2, wall 3, going into and changing its trajectory at that point, deviating enough that most of the pellets were then hitting the ground surface and then bouncing into the back berm and not actually making it to the fourth wall. So the deviation was in a downward direction, and we did denote that on almost all of the number 4 Buckshot from Federal. So
consistently deviating down.
It was, yep. So we, in order to try to change the variable, we shot it from both a standing position, literally shooting straight, and then we tried it from a kneeling position, also shooting straight, just in case the shooter had some downward deviation to their muzzle. I have not measured the angle. It's something that we're going to add to the data going forward, but we were eyeballing it, and certainly from the kneeling, we were noticing that we were as level can be, and we were still finding a downward deviation in the trajectory. So that's interesting.
Yeah.
The other rounds fired, so same material, but here's with the wadding actually tracking through, more concentric with the actual shot group. We are finding, again, that wadding was entering and exiting the first wall, entering and then patterning into the second wall where it broke the second wall surface, and it stayed either in the second wall or it bounced off of it at that point and stopped. Pattern and kept going, though. So the pattern entered and exit, went through wall 3, entered into wall 4. It was doing that downward trajectory that we just spoke about, and it deviated enough to be inconclusive of whether or not it would completely penetrate wall 4. We were finding some pellets in wall 4 without breaking the exterior surface, whether it be the concrete composite or the cedar shakes. Let's take that same episode over to the 3-wall 24-pound meat test. We were seeing the number 4 buck only getting, say, half the pellets hitting the meat. And when it was hitting the meat, it was penetrating the meat, but it was not destroying the meat. However, when we use standard double-aught buck, we were finding massive destruction in the meat and pass-through of the meat in some cases where the meat was thinner. Yeah. So a little bit of difference there, not a lot of data, but again, something to consider. And again, it's pointing us towards the direction of thinking about number 4 Buckshot versus double-aught buck for personal home protection.
For less penetration.
Correct. Yeah. Correct. Yep.
So Defiant, my company, I've been looking at, introducing a Buckshot and a slug.
Nice.
In the, sometime in the near future. And so you're saying that I need to look at number 4 Buckshot instead of traditional.
And that's, yeah, Pete, that's based upon probably 100 rounds fired total. So not a strong sample set by any means, but it's been fairly consistent. And I'd be happy, offline to talk more of this stuff with you. But it does seem to go that direction. I'm guessing it's the mass versus velocity of the smaller bullet. Yeah,
I agree. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I really don't have any experience with number 4 too much. It's always been double-aught, and that's what I was probably going to go with. But you bring up that's very interesting, and definitely something I would like to talk to you further about.
Yeah, anytime. I'm gonna door an open book.
That's great.
Yeah, no, I think you probably have a lot of good info for you for all your rounds for home defense stuff. So let's do this. Do you have any more shotgun data that we need to make sure that we cover?
I
want to hit the listener questions.
Yeah, that's the gist of it. I think we go to questions. I'm going to have to take just a really quick pause because I need to make a really quick phone call, and I'll be right back.
Okay, and that'll give me time to look up the questions here. So
perfect. Thanks, Marty.
And then
see you back. Guys.
Yeah, and then Pete.
Yep.
Based on everything that we just talked about with Ken, what kind of data points were you getting from that? I know, obviously, you keyed in on the shotgun.
Man, I don't even know where to start. I mean, Ken's clearly a wealth of knowledge, and it's a breath of fresh air to hear him speak, because there's a lot of bad information out there. And to hear what he's doing and how he's doing it, man, it's been really nice. I've really, really, he really had my attention.
So with your experience,
and
you've got the 15 years with the SWAT, and then of course you manufacture your own ammunition and you do a lot of testing yourself. With the way that he's going about doing this testing, do you see anything in there that maybe they should be doing this, or they're right on with what they're doing with that to get the kind of results that they're looking for, or not results but the data that they're looking for?
Man, I think it's great. When we were hitting houses back in my younger days, that was a serious topic of conversation. Like we had talked off camera early about trailer houses and stuff. Unfortunately, they're everywhere in America. And data shows, at least from the stuff that we've done, that you have a higher probability to be doing a raid on a trailer home than a regular home. So that was a big topic. So typically, we made, when we would, before we do a hit, we would talk about ammo selection, weapon selection, and stuff like that. So I have another quick story to tell.
Sure.
So long story short, this was a 308 Winchester. A resident was showing off his suppressed 308, launched around into the dirt at a pretty sharp angle. That bullet ricocheted, went about a half a mile, hit a trailer home. There was a gentleman in his living room sitting on his reclining chair. The bullet came through the wall, went through his left armrest on the thing, and lodged into the couch.
Oh, God.
Literally missing him by inches. And he heard what happened, like it just kind of like hit right next to his arm, and so he investigated what it was and pulled out a rifle bullet.
Much to his dismay, I'm sure. He's like,
yeah,
who's trying to kill me?
Yeah, we're talking about a 220 grain bullet going subsonic, so somewhere's around 1,000 feet per second to 1040, somewhere in there.
And how far was this from the actual discharge?
It probably, I can't remember the distance, probably nearly a half a mile.
Good God.
And that was after it ricocheted.
After, full.
I mean, this wasn't straight line trajectory here. Yeah. So we had a ricochet, and then it just caught the right angle and it kept going. So yeah, I mean, that's really crazy to think about. I mean, I think that bullet had enough force. If it would have hit him, it probably went through him. It was if I remember correctly, it was a Sierra, 220 grain Sierra Match King.
Wow.
But interesting, right? So, bullet and firearm selection for in-home, like Ken said, it depends. If your rule, like, where I'm at right now, there isn't houses. I don't have a house within 100 yards of me or more. So, my selection may be different than somebody that, lives in a trailer park where they're 12-foot, property lines. So it's a serious thing, especially in the law enforcement application. I mean, say you do a hit on a home and you have children in the in the back room, like people see, like in the movies, where you go in and you smoke everybody and everything and everything's fine. But real world, you have people's family. You have those bad guys' children there that are totally innocent. You have pregnant wives. You have all kinds of stuff that you have to take into serious consideration, because once that bullet leaves that barrel, it's gone forever. You cannot grab it back. There's no redos. So knowing the trajectory after it leaves that barrel is absolutely vitally important.
Absolutely.
It is. That's somebody's lives depend on it.
100%.
So, no, when you were off camera, I was just saying that, it's, a breath of fresh air to hear you speak. You really captivated my attention just because the stuff that you're saying that you're putting out and stuff. I think it's awesome. And there's really not a lot of people that I can think of anyways that are doing it and doing it to the depth that you're doing it. And I've always thought it was a very serious topic that really nobody, now I'm talking people, Joe Blow, ever takes into consideration.
Right.
I could probably go door to door, and I bet you there's nobody that I come in contact with that has ever thought about.
Didn't even think about it. Yeah. Didn't even think about,
so,
if I shoot, where is it going to go and who is it going to affect?
Yeah.
Likewise, Pete, and I really appreciate those words. It's encouraging, and like we talked about earlier, my initial intention for this was to help law enforcement, particularly our beat cop and or our patrol officer, as well as our citizens and civilians that are out there just trying to do the right thing and protect themselves and protect their families. And they need data like this in order to be able to really truly consider their options, and also consider that sometimes you don't shoot. It doesn't matter how clean the shoot is, doesn't matter if you're in the right. Sometimes it's just best not to. So, hopefully this helps with that, but I really appreciate that a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, just not, getting into an even bigger topic, but I mean, this is so important for law enforcement with all the school shootings and stuff that they've had to experience. Now you go into a school where there's hundreds of children.
Yes.
There's a lot of schools are made with, brick and stuff. I mean, bullets skip, it just gets crazy. So, it's great.
Yeah, we actually do a little party trick related to skipping ammo. Is something that my mentor Kyle Lamb had showed me and taught me many years ago. But even on a dirt surface, you can skip rounds underneath a vehicle and hit targets behind the vehicle.
Absolutely.
Not difficult.
Yeah. We have found, I mean, in my experience, we have found bad guys and good guys tend to hug walls.
Oh, yeah.
They tend to, if they're walking up, a long hallway, they're going to be on either one of those sides of the walls. Well, and bullets skip down walls real nice and easy. But people need to, really take that into
Make a
consideration.
bank shot. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Yep. The old.
Let's go to some
bending bullets.
Let's go to some listener questions now.
That'd be great.
And we'll start off with the 762x39 question. Pew Pew RN. And I don't know if you've done both or not. Does the Russian-made steel ammo, cased ammo, penetrate better than a regular FMJ? Do the Russian hollow points and soft points expand?
So, from my experience, as this is kind of very similar to using SS-109 or M855, in the 5.56 equivalent, the steel penetrator does initiate a tumble to some degree, but in the 7.6239, it's got so much energy that in these tests specifically, it has already passed through all that matter.
Yeah.
So where we're starting to see that deviation of tumble is actually beyond. So when we place targets actually in the backstop just to see where it's hitting and if it's actually changing trajectory, we find pretty straight hits, even including, the steel core Russian ammo or steel core Chinese ammo for that matter, for those that are interested. Now that not to be confused with Russian AP, because that is different. Gotcha.
And I think most of our 762 questions here are people who want to see penetration. That's why they're using the 762. So they're talking about, defeating vehicles and, barricades and things like that. And I think, and that's not what we're talking about today. So that could be another episode that we get into that kind of stuff. Maybe the AK corner.
Yeah. We can do a whole nother one on vehicles. I've got a tremendous amount of data with that too.
Yeah.
Yeah. That could be a topic by itself.
Yep.
Yeah, and Defiant Munitions makes a solid copper expanding bullet, 124 grain, and that thing is an absolute penetrating beast. So there's not much that stops that bullet. It's so if these viewers are looking for something to go the distance, it penetrates a ton.
This is a good question from P-Man, and this will come from, I guess, your personal experiences and probably not your test that you've done. But he says, best unexpected household item that could prove relatively bulletproof. I guess, if you have intruders and you do your house invasion training with your family, it's like, all right, get behind this and do this kind of thing.
Quite honestly, it doesn't exist in a lot of homes anymore, but this is both home and office, and it's a file cabinet. If that file cabinet is actually full of paper or other paper type material, and it is hit through the paper, not in the orientation of not the side of the paper, but through the paper, that's a good stopper. You'll probably have the best results out of that. I have shot a tremendous amount of home goods, furniture and appliances and otherwise, and most of these cartridges pass through it like it's butter.
Yeah. And a phone book will not stop a bullet.
Oh, no.
Just so you know.
Wet one a little bit better.
You remember that video that was going around viral a few years ago? These kids had a 50 cal, and the chick shot the dude. He was holding the phone book up like it's going to stop, and it just went right through and killed him. Pretty stupid.
Oh, you're kidding me.
No.
I didn't hear that one.
Oh.
No.
All right.
Good Lord. Yeah.
These influencers, I tell you. John Adams the third. Let's see. That's another 7.62. Yeah, that's more barrier penetration question.
What's he got?
Oh, you want to hear it? Okay. John Adams III. Does 7.62 by 3.9 have advantages when it comes to barrier penetration on automobile versus 5.56, especially out of shorter barrels? What caliber is the best truck gun?
So yes and yes.
Yeah.
239 is like a rape tape when it comes to barrier penetration, including vehicles. The 5.56 does not reliably pass through a vehicle. It will penetrate, but as far as pass through, not necessarily reliable. So if you need to do destruction to the interior contents of a vehicle reliably, the 7.6239 will do it from just about any and all angles, including the pillars. So there's a lot of talk about pillars and pillars retaining a certain amount of kinetic energy. Will from centrifuge training has a whole bunch of data, but most of his, excuse me a second.
Get you a little drink there.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So I was saying, Will from Centrifuge has got a tremendous amount of data, but most of his is related to 9mm, 5.56, related to police work and pillars. Really great data, really great training. But the 7.6239 will just go through those pillars. It doesn't typically stop. So where the 5.56 loses energy and it starts to fragment and or change trajectory, the 7.6239 holds fairly true and keeps on going. So if you if you're asking about stopping a vehicle and or barrier penetration, 7.6239. The other question was related to barrel length. So ballistically, and this is in short, again, I'm not looking to get in any arguments with those they're big ballistics people, but the 7.6239 is not as influenced by barrel length and velocity loss as a 5.56 is. So the whole premise of 5.56 NATO is to create tumbling effect, and you really need 14.5 inches in order to build that velocity. And correct me if I'm wrong, Pete, I think it's 3,200 feet per second in order to have the right influence of that projectile on that object. When we start getting into the lower, getting to 2,900, 2,800s from lower, shorter barrel lengths, it does not have that tumbling effect per se. So you start to ice pick through material, and it's less effective.
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely agree. Some of these short barrels, like 7-inch barrels, 10-inch barrels, and stuff like that, you start breaking under that 2,600 feet per second mark, and you see a huge decrease in performance from a 5.56. But but like you said, it was spot on. 7.62 by 39. There is a big difference. 7.62 by 39s tend to do still a lot better in shorter barrels than the 5.56. But yeah, people need to take that into consideration, big consideration for bullet performance, especially out of these super popular shortest possible 5.56 they can get. They're really choking that cartridge.
Agreed.
Good points. The shaky taster. In the early days of the pandemic, I was living in the apartment above our distillery with my dog and SKS. At night, I frequently wondered if we were looted by armed pillheads to steal our hand sanitizer and whiskey. If it would be wise to get in a gunfight in a building filled with delicious, flammable whiskey, housed comfortably inside of a flammable wooden barrels. So, I don't think a bullet's going to ignite that, but
yeah, it typically would not, from my understanding. However, why waste good whiskey?
Yeah,
I mean,
that's really the important topic.
Just for the mere fact that you put a hole in a whiskey cask and you're going to lose all that whiskey, it's not worth getting in a gunfight.
It's never worth getting in a gunfight, period. So let's keep it.
And if you've got dragon's breath in your shotgun, then you might worry about it.
Yeah,
Truth.
there you go.
Truth, yes.
Yeah.
I want to know where this guy lives because I'm coming to visit him.
I was going to say,
where is this delicious whiskey you speak of? I want it.
Absolutely. So one thing I will add to that, just because even though the humor aside, if he's talking about living above and potentially shooting downwards, right? So now we're introducing a whole nother thought towards angles and where projectiles go, and the solid surface that's most likely going to be hit rather than the soft surface of a wall. If you hit a concrete floor, or even if you hit a hardwood floor at an angle, you're going to have deflection most likely. And now you're worried about where that projectile is going and exiting. So that's a whole nother aspect to this. And when we get together again, we will talk about floors and what happens when you shoot through floors or ceilings.
Yeah, because that's a whole nother animal.
It is, yes.
Let's see.
That's great.
I think we covered this. This is TD North 8. Does 5.56 or 5.45 penetrate more? Feel free to elaborate on different grains. Thanks. And we did touch on that.
Yep. They're very, very similar. 5.45 has had a little bit better performance against center blocks than 5.56, but that's very, very minor. And going with Pete's data points earlier about the deviation and the lack of stability in that cartridge, and again, thinking for personal defense and not knowing where that thing might go, that would give me a little bit of pause. And I'll just take a slight deviation. So 5.45 guys gonna blow their heads off in just a second, but I don't typically support 5.45 only from the standpoint that it's not strongly domestically produced. And I'm under the personal mind that, for preparedness value, that we concentrate mostly on ammunition that is more widely available. So it's a great cartridge. It's just not something you're going to find at your local box store. Typically, you're not going to find it at a local PD. And your neighbor probably isn't going to have ammo to help you out with unless you're all, hanging out shooting AKs together. So it's just another point to think about.
Yeah,
Good
that's
point.
I had actually just had that very same conversation with a couple of friends of mine that they need to start seeking more common calibers for and we were the conversation was end of the world type stuff, and I need to know what I'm using. I mean, that I'm going to be able to go find at my neighbor's house or really anywhere. And that even comes down to gun parts. What are you most likely to find if you break this part? Same thing with ammo. So it's a good point.
Yep.
And you did a good job talking about this. AKM Archer Slugs, got to talk slugs. I do love how a drum full of them will take down a cinder block wall. But seriously, I'd like to hear some content on slugs versus buck, double-aught buck versus number 4, and you did that. And we could go down a rabbit hole with that.
All right, that's a great question. Yeah, I'm glad we were able to cover that for them.
And this gets into vehicles again. We've got several vehicle questions. Answer this to the extent you want to. Tandem dually, bullet deviation, or on vehicle windshields. How does the safety glass and angle of the windshield affect trajectory?
The short answer is yes, and a lot. It can be a lot or a little. Depends upon the actual round being fired, the velocity, the shape of the projectiles actually got more to do with it than anything else. And what's called the rake of the glass. That's the angle of approach that the projectile is collecting and or hitting first when it's contacting that glass. That's where most of the deviation starts and comes from. As far as how much deviation, every different round matters. Bonded ammo tends to do better against laminated glass. So, traditional tempered glass just shatters and falls, but laminated glass stays in place because it has that mylar in the middle of it for insulation value and for safety value. The mylar itself will assist the projectile in its usually downward trajectory, being fired from interior of the vehicle outwards. We have seen anywhere from 2-inch deviation to 12, 18, 30-inch deviation, all depending on the round being fired, the rake, the angle of the glass, and the distance to the actual threat target. So that's a conversation into itself, and literally any round
it could be a whole nother episode talking about the vehicle.
Yeah,
it really could.
Yeah.
It's a great question, though, and do expect deviation.
Yeah.
So one thing that, there's 1,000 things that Kyle left with me as far as teaching me stuff over the years, and this is an important one too. He had a saying that says P for plenty. So when it comes to glass, you fire, or glass or any other solid object, you fire, you make a hole through it, and you stick your muzzle through that hole, and you continue. And then now you're just shooting through air, so no big deal. But P for plenty, make a hole, and keep on going.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's right. It just depends on so many things. I mean, if you're shooting in and out of a Corvette, windshield, or a Jeep, or their angle is almost, right on. But
right.
Again, we make the bullets that I designed. I don't know if you know this, but we specialize in solid copper expanding projectiles.
That's awesome.
We do make leaded, jacketed hollow points and stuff like that. But our specialty, what we're known as solid copper, and we have found that the solid copper projectiles do much better through windshield glass. They have the least amount of deviation. At least my experience through the projectiles I make. I know there's other solid copper bullets out there that do very well. But yeah, I mean, so projectile is really that can make or break it. So yeah.
This is another 7.62 by 3.9. I think it's more of a statement than a question, and I think we've addressed it. Richard Nim, at what point does 7.62 by 3.9 become too much for personal defense? The caliber is my go-to shit hits the fan scenarios, but for everyday or home defense in a dense city, I tend to lean more towards a 9mm or 5.45 to prevent collateral damage from over-penetration. So I think we've kind of discussed that. I mean, there's...
Yeah, the only caveat I'll add to that, Marty, is the 9mm, as we referred to earlier, when we were talking about the barrier penetration and the continuing of the trajectory. The 9mm versus a 5.56 or 5.45 or anything like that, you have much more mass over energy going on with it. So it tends to bust through barriers better. So when you think about the 9mm, it's still a 30 caliber size projectile with a fair amount of mass to it in comparison to that 5.56 or 5.45 for that matter. So, think about that as you're looking at your potential for overpenetration in your urban environment.
Yeah. And I want to go back to some pistol rounds. I know we focus more on the 9mm, but as they're getting into this round over this round for penetration, when the pistol rounds, I know you did the 40, you did 45.
Yep.
You did some other rounds like that. As far as, I guess in the scenario that we're talking about, least penetration, which one of those were you finding the better results on?
The least amount of barrier penetration came from lower quality 45 ACP rounds. So when you get into your bonded ammo for 45 ACP, the value and or the amount of penetration retained from the mass is quite good. But when you're talking about the lesser quality, just standard FMJ and or a less expensive hollow point, you're probably going to have less barrier penetration, simply because, again, you're talking about weight and velocity. The velocity on a 45 ACP is already subsonic in most cases. So, yeah, that probably would be the slowest and the least to penetrate stronger barriers, at least.
Gotcha. Corey Brown says, I must, and I think you talked a little bit about copper here, Pete. So I must admit, I'm greatly enjoying the solid copper barrier immune ammo on the market lately. But considering Hornady and their critical defense load, what would you choose, them or a solid copper?
Is this for me?
Yeah, both of you, but go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, from my experience, solid copper expanding ammunition if you're wanting barrier penetration stuff, it's first choice. I cannot think of any conventional cup and core lead jacketed bullet that will outperform a solid copper bullet in barrier penetration. Now, if I don't know what you think of that, but I have not seen it yet. Typically, solid copper expanding bullets are king when it comes to barrier penetration.
I totally agree. We haven't experimented with a lot of it, but I have seen those types of rounds being used, again, both during my time doing bullets and vehicles courses back at Sig Sauer, and I've seen some students bring them to our data analysis classes, but have not done a wide variety and or enough of them to really build a solid piece of data. But everything that I've seen matches what you're saying, Pete.
Yeah.
Armas Braves, ARMAS_Braves asks, or he's not asking, he says, Gary Hughes has been on an ammo independence kick for a while. I don't know who Gary Hughes is. Do y'all?
Name sounds familiar.
Encouraging guys to make all components. Got me wanting to reload more. Does Pete have any warnings or tips for those of us crazy enough to start making DIY components? And I do mean crazy loco. I will straight up cast my own 308 and coat it with spray-on bed liner to bring it up to 310. Might even hammer in a tungsten carbide drill bit in there and go full send.
Oh, man. I just, caution, safety. This is, these are dangerous activities. And I will caution, caution safety.
Wisely, yeah.
Yeah.
If you don't know what you're doing, don't do it.
Yeah. I mean, listen, I am a crazy son of a bitch. We do stupid things here, but, it comes with known risk. So, I'm very, hold my beer. I'll try this first type of person. I just,
sounds like that's what this guy is.
When you're dealing with explosions that are inches away from your face, it's a serious game. And, if you come up on the losing part of that, you could be maimed pretty bad. So that's pretty funny. That was a good question. It was funny.
And last question right here, and then Ken's got to go. We'll sign off. This is more towards Pete here. This is Brentster 1029. Defiant Munitions must answer this when your ammo has been a breath of fresh air into the market of this kind of ammo you actually carry in your gun to stop a threat. Reliable is a understatement. Most versatile out there with the I don't know if he's saying best 300 subs in the game. Yeah, best is what he means. The expanding one, the long guns have blown me away the last year. The 180 grain 308 subs come on. Dead air makes those babes almost move silent. I have often wondered what your defensive ammo will do on miss targets in a standard home with 2x4 sheetrock, maybe OBS, nothing special. I have a family of 3, so I have concerns on over-penetration. Home defense guns, usually your 200 grain, 300 blackout subs with a can or 7.62 with 3.9 Landy subsonics on my Meridian Defense 11-inch. Love to see how your bullets would react to structure testings. Keep up the great ammo, guys. So sounds like you two are going to collaborate. You're going to send him some ammo. He's going to do some testing.
Yeah.
I would love to see the 300 blackout also on some of your testing, because that's
absolutely
one of my preferred rounds.
Yeah. And as a matter of fact, it's been a year and 8 months since I've seen a 300 blackout case in my shop, and I just got some. So I will I'll send you some.
Sweet.
Anyways, man, that was very humbling to hear. I'm not sure who that is, who that guy is.
Brentster 1029. I don't know.
Yeah, it was very humbling to hear him, with the kind words about my ammo. So yeah, I mean, subsonic bullets, definitely are not going to penetrate as much. But those solid copper bullets are heavy penetrators, even at subsonic velocities. And, so the way I designed, we kind of specialize in subsonic bullets. And the way I designed those subsonic bullets is to get increased penetration, more some than, because those bullets are already starting at such a slow velocity. So I kind of designed, those bullets to give increased penetration at subsonic velocity. So, but I think, what we should do is collaborate, some testing, get some ammunition to you. I would love to sponsor and help pay for, all the stuff that needs to be put into it, supplies and stuff. And, I've always tried to, obviously we do our in-house testing and stuff like that, but anytime I can find somebody to do an unbiased outsourced testing, I prefer that, because it's like, hey, listen, I didn't pay him, or anything like that. We helped with supplies and gelatin.
It just adds to the legitimacy. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So
we'll definitely make that happen between you guys. We'll let you talk off. Off.
Much appreciated, Pete.
So thanks to everyone for the questions. Those were great questions. If we didn't get to yours and you still want some answers, just email me, talkinglead@gmail.com, and I'll forward it on to these guys and get you some answers if I can't help you. But the winner, I think that last question was a really good question there. So the winner of the Seal 1 cleaning packet is going to go to the Brentster 1029. So Brentster, awesome. Email me, talkinglead@gmail.com. Give me your contact info, and we'll get you one of these awesome Seal 1 CLP cleaning packets for your pistol or your rifle. Specify which one you want it for. So that's it, guys. Great show. I know we could talk days and days on this, but that's why we're going to have more episodes. And,
yeah, that's such a great topic. We could go so far down the rabbit hole on all those topics.
Yeah.
We'd be here for 2 days.
And, there was another good question. FPS Murdoch was wanted us to get into. Was it concealment versus concealment versus cover? Yeah.
Yeah, I'll briefly hit it for him. He's a great supporter of all of us, and I always appreciate seeing him pop up on IG. So, what is cover? Cover is something that stops projectiles, right? And what is concealment? Something you can't see through. In most cases, in a home environment, office environment, box store environment, most of the materials that are in and around us are concealment. They're not cover. We'll talk more on that and what might be cover, but pretty much be said, like we've talked about, you can kind of surmise that most of the rounds that we've spoken to will travel through, if not all of those materials, most of them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, when it comes down to it, if somebody's shooting at me, I would rather be behind a screen door than, you know, being in front of that bullet. I mean, so any concealment is better than no concealment. But obviously, people need to realize and that's a very, misunderstood thing. What is concealment? What is cover?
Yeah, that's a whole nother show that we can get into, and we will do that. We will definitely do that.
Yeah, that would be all. That'd be a good one.
But big thanks to our guest, Pete. Thank you for taking the time to be on and joining us. I know we're going to have you back on in future episodes. Ken, as we discussed, we're going to go more into this, and of course the AK Corner. You're always welcome on that show. Got one coming up next month. And then all our sponsors, make sure you go Mission First Tactical, missionfirsttactical.com, SEAL1 is SEAL1.com. Go to Factory 47 to get our AK Corner logo apparel. Medicine in Bad Places, we had them on. We've got a discount code set up with them now, Leadhead20. You get 20% off at Medicine in Bad Places. They just sent me a IFAC kit right here, so I'm going to check out their IFAC kit. Pretty nice. He sent me some other cool stuff too. Good dude. IWI US Kel-Tec. Use the code Leadhead. 15% off at Kel-Tec. Defiant Munitions. We've got the code Leadhead all caps set up. And now that Pete's got his components, he's going to start cranking out that ammo, so you guys can go get 10% off.
Yeah, we got 7.62 by 39 on the shelf right now, and
all right.
So we got all kinds of good stuff.
Very good, very good.
Send people your way, Pete.
Yeah. Let's touch base, in text message or something, just so we have each other's numbers after this, and then
I'll hook you guys up. Let me do the sign off, and then we'll hook you guys up.
Please
here.
Do it. That'd be great.
So Leadheads, go and support all those that make this show possible. And thank our guests. Go to their IGs, go to their Facebooks, go to their websites, and let them know you heard about them here on the show. And that's how they come back and want to do more. They hear from you, Leadheads. But until then, as always, Leadheads, keep your loved ones close.
And your firearms closer.
Perfect. And know that penetration of your bullet. Good deal. Oh, and thanks to Brian Keeney.
Huge thanks to Occam, Brian, for sure.
Yeah, he ducked out on us.
Yeah, sucker.
Yeah.